Hey, this is Doug at Design 8 Studio, and this is my Ender Extender 400 XL, and I've outfitted it for prototyping large parts quickly, and it turns out that it's a great mill for producing 3D prints that can be used as Christmas gifts. And when you have a print bed that is just over 16 inches by 16 inches, over 400 by 400 millimeters, you can run into an issue where you really need dual Z. And so I've got dual Z, but when you have dual Z, you can run into an issue where the X gantry doesn't stay level. So the fix for this, as many of you know, is to do this type of synchronization. So this is just 3D printed part with a pulley and another 3D printed part with a screw and an idler, and same 3D printed part with a pulley on the other side. So I wanted to mention to you a couple of things. One is that the original design called for printing in an upright like this. I found a file. It had rounded edges, but it was made for printing like this, which required supports up under here. You know, kind of nasty. I hate doing that kind of thing. So I redesigned one that this iteration here that could print in this orientation so that it did not need supports. The challenge I ran into with this one was my layer lines were creating cleavage planes so that when the tension of squeezing the 608ZZ bearing in, which that's one of the reasons I had to do a remix. I have a bunch of 608ZZ bearings, and the design that I downloaded, which I don't have one to show here, called for smaller bearings, which I didn't want to wait to order more bearings in. So this one, when I would go to press the bearing in, if there was any squeeze at all, it would separate along these layer lines here. So not really the best orientation for printing. And you really run into not any better here. It just changes the direction of the layer lines. So I came up with an idea of actually separating the print and having it able to print in two pieces like this, where I get the right print orientation. And so this design was really also beneficial for another reason, and that is that I could attach the bottom piece and put the pulley, the 20 teeth pulley in place before attaching the top piece, and this let me get the belt stretched over and pulled down and then install the top piece. And I really liked that arrangement, but I felt like I wanted one that would not just kind of fit together, but actually kind of snap together. And so I came up with this one that has these lovely little teeth that has a really nice snap together effect. And so this one wound up being the one that I went with, and I really like it. You may be wondering why do the holes on one side, the screw holes are just round, but on the other side they're a slot. And the ones with the slot are meant to go on the 20 by 40 aluminum extrusion. That's these here. This is the bottom one with the wide slots. An easy way to remember it is that the top extrusion has a slot that allows lateral adjustment along the x-axis, so its screw holes don't need to allow for x-axis alignment, but the bottom one does. And the thing is that depending on how your printer is made, your stepper motor, when aligned to have the lead screw aligned with this platform base, it may or may not be centered exactly on the aluminum extrusion. And if this base is designed so that to get it aligned, your lead screw is off center of the aluminum extrusion, then you need to be able to have adjustment on this part here. And that is indeed the case with me. And so having that slot on the bottom allows the bottom part to move over, and the top part will always be able to move because it's being it's being T-nutted into the top extrusion that has the horizontal slot. So to close this out though, let me tell you that the closest belt size that I could find that is a closed loop belt, and I have a mixture of pulleys, some for 6mm wide belts and some for 10mm wide belts. And I had a stock of 10mm wide belt to cut to fit and form your own belt. But only my pulleys for 6mm had an 8mm bore so that they could slip down over the lead screw. So I had pulleys for 6mm, but the belt supply I had was only 10mm. So I went to look for buying closed loop, and in trying to calculate the size, I came up with about 970 millimeters. The closest standard size of closed loop belt that I could find was a closed loop of 976 millimeters. So I did some Googling and did some YouTube watching and tried to figure out how to close my own belt. And it involves cutting it on both sides halfway between the teeth, super gluing the two ends together, and then having roughed up the back with a file, you cut some ribbon and super glue this ribbon on. And I want to tell you that at least if you make it the way I did, which was how it was shown in the videos that I saw, this length is just way too wide, and this extra stiffened area with all this super glue and ribbon, it can't cut this tight curve. And so what happens is, as this belt is getting closer and closer over to this pulley, it gets to where the motors, the stepper motors, just don't have enough strength to pull this thickened area of belt into a bend around this. So you're looking at, this started out as a 10mm wide belt. I literally had to cut down its wideness to get it down to the 6mm wideness. And this area is just too thick to make this turn, and it literally binds up the entire shooting match. So if you're printing something that has a height requirement, that has your splice moving all the way across till it gets to this point, your print job is going to fail. So at this point, my only shot for getting all of this usable is to either find another way to splice this belt or to buy the off-the-shelf 976mm closed loop belt, which probably will require me redoing my design for my tensioner so that I can push it further out. So I've already done a lot of printing of Christmas gifts on this unit, and I've still got more to go. And so I'll definitely be working to get this back in operation. But I wanted to go ahead and go live so that I could give an understanding of what I was up against, not only to appeal for advice in the comments, but also so that when I do come up with a solution, you'll be on board with me in understanding why it was necessary. If you've enjoyed our content, please feel free to click like and maybe even go beyond that and click subscribe. And until the next video, I wish you happy making. This is Doug with Design 8 Studio.